It's winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, and it's been getting dark pretty quickly, pretty early. Like we wake up, it's dark. It's like 4:45 almost here in New York, and the sun is almost setting. So it's going to be dark probably within like the next 10-15 minutes here. Hey babe, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Christina DeStefano. I want to get into embracing the darker time periods of our year, in our seasons, and also how it kind of ties into how I see trends going for 2025. So you know that I'm a big fan of adjectives. I would rather use adjectives to describe a home or a design than I would like to use a specific style to define it. And the reason why is because I think that a person's home or an interior design or decor is so much more nuanced than just a specific label. I think we're probably more eclectic sort of people than we are just like one straight line, one straight category of design. I think eclectic style is very interesting, and I gravitate towards that more just because I feel like that has a lot more personality, it has a lot more depth than just one straight design. When we're limiting ourselves to one straight like design style, like the first thing I think of is like mid-century modern. I think that we then almost begin to look a little bit themey and less designed, less curated. And I think the more curated a space is, the more it looks designed. And I use the word design to mean like well thought out, intentional, planned, and planned to a certain extent. I feel like to make the most of your creativity and your budget, it's always good to plan a design while also leaving room for inspired purchases that just come across your path and just speak to your soul. All these things in mind, and thinking about, okay, we're at the beginning of a new year, and so it's dark. What can we take from this experience, and how can we work with our sort of limitations? How can we work with what we're given? I feel like with design, the best design can often come out of working with your limitations, working with things that might seemingly be like wrong or something that's kind of like a mistake, and then turning that mistake or turning that design sort of limitation into something new, creative, interesting, and ultimately beautiful. I've made some notes here in my little design journal. If you don't have a design journal and you're new to this channel, definitely get one, because I feel like it's a great place to, like when you're watching these videos, to take some notes. I also find it to be relaxing when you're watching a video, especially like a video where you're learning something, to kind of take some notes and kind of like journal about how you feel about the things that I'm talking about. It gives you an opportunity to really take in and sort of digest what I'm sharing with you. So it's been a while since I've done kind of like a teaching video, but I think it's the beginning of the year. Let's talk about this direction of 25, what we need from home this year, and how we can execute it in our homes. My 3 adjectives that would describe 2025, like where we are right now, how I see the year kind of projecting itself, as well as how to kind of embrace this time period that we're in, with it being dark so long, since we're at the very beginning of 25, is layered, meaningful, and sensual. And what I mean by, I'll get into those 3 adjectives, but I think that if we're looking at this space right now, at the beginning of the year, we're in January right now, 2025, when we think layered, we're thinking about different textures, different pieces that can bring meaning into a space, ways to incorporate rhythm throughout the room. So for example, I've got the black cabinet here, I've got my black painting here, I've got a lamp here, and there's various aspects of black that we've kind of layered throughout the room. There are other colors and other materials as well, but this is a way to create a little more depth. It creates visual interest in the way that things are not just simply flat. When you're looking into a room, it's like, oh, there's kind of like the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. So you'll see that a lot like in set design, but it's also something you want to think about when you're creating a space and you're thinking about layers in a space. Because like, for example, in this room, when you're looking at it straight on, your foreground is going to be like the bench that you see here. Your middle ground is the coffee table, and your background would then be like the credenza with like the television. So that's what I mean by that. And like in set design, if you're familiar, same kind of thing. So you're thinking about that gives you layers, and it gives you depth. So that's like on a larger scale, like on a room scale, but also in a vignette that gives you an opportunity too, because you can have, like, say for example, I've got this vintage kind of rustic raw wood table. And then, so that's like the main piece there. Then I've got this planter sculptural thing on top. And then I've got a candle with a little tile. So that's kind of like, that's part of it. But then you've got the layered artwork behind it, different textures, different styles, different shapes. And it creates multiple sort of dimensions or different layers or different depths for your eyes to kind of move around to, and then finally rest on the piece in the middle. So like in the middle ground. Texture ties into layering. So remember when I said like sensual, that gives you an opportunity to think then about different materials, different textures. In terms of textures that you can incorporate in these darker months, these winter months, and just fully embrace it, fully go for the dark. Carl Jung said to embrace the shadow to find other opportunity that you've sort of suppressed. And I think that in the wintertime, we are so afraid of like the darkness, if that makes sense. Like, it's almost like without the daylight, it's like, what do we do in the evening? It's like, it's about incorporating ways to kind of embrace and enjoy the evening. So for example, here in our home, we light a fire every evening, and that in itself, we actually lost Wi-Fi a few days ago. And so we just lit a fire and we hung out and drank tea and talked and watched the fire. And it was incredibly relaxing. But it's little things like that. So having a fire, if you have a fireplace, you could even turn on, I saw on YouTube or something like that, they have a Yule log. So you can even have something like that in the background that, while it's a little like kind of quirky, it still provides that sort of embracing the darkness feeling and just kind of creating that really sensual kind of cozy atmosphere. There's something about fire, I feel like, that really makes the nighttime feel so much more sensual, so much more like attractive and kind of mysterious and beautiful. And I also think about that with like candlelight. Some people are not into candles. I myself, I love candles. I like a flame. I love fire. I'm not I'm not a pyromaniac, but I think fire just is such a beautiful, mesmerizing element. So a candle, the light that comes off of a candle can be quite beautiful. There are a lot of rechargeable LED candles now that, while they don't look exactly like real candles, they give off beautiful light. It doesn't look like a real candle. I've seen some at Pottery Barn that are in sort of these like lantern things that actually look really nice, and they look fairly realistic. But I still really love a real candle just because I'm so tied to fragrance. And I feel like that then adds another layer too. So it's like we're looking at fabrics and textures. So like darker, matte, muted velvets are really beautiful to introduce into your home in these colder months, be it drapes, pillows. Some of these faux fur throws are really nice, or some kind of really beautiful wool blanket could be really nice. Pillows are always great. Extra pillows on the sofa, soft things. Just think in terms of softness. That's what we want to be looking for, because we're trying to create that sensual experience. We just mean like catering to the senses, your sense of touch, your sense of smell, your sense of sight, your sense of taste. So in terms of that reminds me of another video I did, the 5 senses, decorating with the 5 senses video. You should definitely check that out. But in terms of layering, thinking about like those really soft fabrics, I just think like velvet. You could go with chenilles. I've seen some chenilles that look nice. You have to be careful with chenille because it can look a little cheap because it has a lot more sheen, which fabrics with more sheen tend to look on like the cheaper end because they tend to look a little too synthetic. So if you're going to go for something like a chenille, I would look for something that's a little more matted, that doesn't have so much shine to it. Same with the velvets, a deeper matte, rich color versus this shiny velvets. The deeper matte sort of velvet is going to have a much more expensive and sort of sensual look and feeling to it. I think things like that are just really beautiful, and I feel like in 2025 we're going to want more of that sort of experiential feeling. We're going to be looking at, how does home make us feel? How do you want home to make you feel? It's not the first time you've heard that question on this channel. We talk about it all the time because we talk about, how do you want home to feel? How do you want to feel when you're in your home? And you start to build your home around those feelings. And you could again default to certain adjectives of how you want your home to feel. That then leads me to meaningful. So while we're looking at our home, I think that's probably the biggest trend of 2025. And it's not even a trend because I feel like it's more of a mindset when it comes to our home, is to make something experiential. We want more from our homes. We want true nurturing from our homes. And it becomes like, how can we make home a place that nurtures us? How can we nurture our home? And when I say nurturing your home, I'm talking about, how do we design our home? What things do we bring into our home, intentionally bring into our home to nurture this space, to sort of create this nest where we feel safe, where we can express our creativity? I think that's the biggest trend of 2025. I think all of the design is going to be based around that. That is a mindset trend as much as it is a design trend in general. We want to create spaces that have a lot of character and that express our personality and express our creativity. That is a trend that will never go out of style. Another way that you can create this sort of sensual sort of, I don't know, it's kind of almost feels like it's a new way to look at your home, because I think that all of the minimalism that we experienced before it's kind of just going in the opposite direction, because we want our homes to be more homey, and a homey home is not minimal. A homey home is I don't want to say it's like maximalism, but I do think that there are more things in a Homey-Home. I think it's really important that you are organized and you have plenty of storage, because you can overdo it. I don't know. If you are a maximalist, you're not going to think it's overdoing it. I've come to realize I was always more of like a middleist. I was never a minimalist necessarily. I went through a small period of being a minimalist, but I think we will be seeing more and more design leaning towards maximalism, because that can come in the way of layering patterns, which I am a big fan of. It's also quite nuanced when you're layering patterns, but you can have a lot of fun with that. My general rule of thumb with layering patterns is to find patterns that are within the same color palette, and that I like with the 2025 trends in like layering, you can layer with patterns, layer with fabrics, layer with wallpaper, layer with art. But I think that the more toned down they are, the more enjoyable they are to the eye. When you have a lot of very vivid, bright, colorful patterns and you're full-on maximalist and you've got a lot of different things, that for some people might be energizing. For me, I would feel a little too overwhelmed. But if it was in muted tones, or like if everything was in a similar palette and tones were either a bit lighter and muted combined with some darker muted, and it felt soothing, I feel like that would be really beautiful. And I feel like that's kind of the direction that we're going towards with like the layering and the experiential, because now we're talking about like you can paint ceilings, you can wallpaper ceilings, you can use floor to ceiling drapes, you can inject patterns, you can have pattern rugs, you can have pattern upholstery, pillows, you know, like all these things. There's a lot going on there, but when you're toning everything down, it then gives you more of like a cozy cocoon feeling. And I think that is a really great way to embrace the winter. Sometimes we try to approach winter months like we're in right now with the same furnishings that we have in the summer. But when the months start getting colder and the days start getting shorter, we need to inject heavier fabrics like those velvets that I was mentioning, or like those pillows, those throws. If you don't have a rug, it's a great time to bring in a rug, bring in maybe more candles. Perhaps you need a little more lighting in these cooler months. But these are ways to these are ways to embrace the warmer, the colder, darker months, and to really find a way to enjoy it. Little things like that, just kind of like taking the evening easy, lighting a fire, lighting some candle, playing some music. Those are ways to kind of also create like this really beautiful experience in your home, that it's so much more than decor. It's about creating ambiance. And the last thing I want to point out that I've seen, and I can feel it too with design, like, 'cause it's really resonating with me, is just an influx of millwork. So warm woods, dark woods, custom millwork, if you can afford that, beautiful wood paneling and things like that in the home. I think we are going to see more and more of that. People like real colors, like in that family or in that kind of color range, like warmer panelings, darker panelings, walnut, mahogany, both highly lacquered woods or very shiny finishes on woods, as well as we're going to continue to see those more natural, more matte finishes on woods, but just the incorporation of more wood and embracing the warm wood, more wood and warm wood, as well as the darker woods, like the medium to dark woods. So like that kind of like walnut range to like darker mahoganies, to that warmer sort of honey range, into like some of the darker, deeper red finishes as well, or kind of like orangey red. So we're gonna see more of that. one way that you can, if you cannot afford to pay for millwork and paneling, you know, put into your home, you can get creative with paint. There are beautiful paint colors that give off that same feeling. I particularly love painted cabinets. That's one of the things that we did in this house. At the very beginning, we had these like 1980s honey wood cabinets that were just not right in the space. And we immediately painted the cabinets an antique white. But you could have a lot of fun with the painted cabinets. These are the ways that we are satisfying, like using our homes and our interior design, our decor style, our creativity to satisfy our emotional needs. Because we're now, I think, through this channel, like all of us here, perhaps you were already doing this, but I hope that I've inspired you to really understand how meaningful and how much home can really give you. And that when you're putting yourself into it, when you're thinking about how do I want to feel in my home, you're able then to create something that is, number one, unique to you. So I think that's really important, but also you're able to create a space that satisfies your emotional needs for security, for inspiration, for fulfilling your need to create. We all have that ability to be creative within us. People say they don't have the ability to be creative or they're not creative. I think that's just creativity that box hasn't been opened, or perhaps the lid was shut tightly when they were children and then they believed that they were creative. But we all have that ability to be creative, and in our homes is the best place to do it. It's like a muscle. The more you express yourself, the more you use your creativity, the more you think, oh, maybe we could try it this way, or what if I did this? And you're fearless with trying those things. That is going to connect you to kind of those intuitive impulses, those ideas, those new ideas, those ways to create things in your home that are different from what you've seen before. So now you're the person creating the trends. And the trend this year, the biggest trend, is creating a space that nurtures you. I think above all, everything that we're going to see this year is going to be all about creating a space that nurtures you. It just so happens that when I'm recording this video, it is winter time. So it's like, okay, how can we use the winter time, the darkness, the so many hours of darkness, to our best advantage? And I hope you got some ideas from this video. Let me know if you have some ideas or some suggestions, because I'm always looking for really clever and fun or creative ways to really kind of embrace the winter months. This house is it's geared for all 4 seasons, but in the wintertime, it's especially fun because we light up the fireplace. I think that's my favorite thing. So on that note, I just want to say, sending you so much love from Pound Ridge. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Mwah.